Imagine being trapped in a pitch-black room for half a century. You are deaf. You are blind. You are billions of miles from the nearest human soul. You are Voyager 1, a machine no bigger than a compact car, drifting through the unfathomable darkness of deep space, 14.5 billion miles from home. Launched back in 1977, this probe had a lifespan of only 5 years. It was destined to fade silently into the dark. But nearly 5 decades later, Voyager isn't just alive. It is defying every odd. Recently, however, the narrative has shifted. This is no longer merely a tale of survival. Out there, something bizarre is unfolding. Voyager is transmitting signals, pulses, patterns, and data that defy logic. It is heating up. It is altering its course autonomously, and it is processing information in ways its 1970s hardware physically shouldn't handle. Could Voyager have stumbled upon something in the void between stars? Or, perhaps even more chilling, has something out there stumbled upon Voyager? Strap in, because the answer may be terrifying. To grasp why this should be impossible, we must examine what Voyager actually is. The saga starts not with spaceflight, but with a rare alignment of the cosmos. In the early 70s, astronomers realized Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter were about to align in a configuration that happens only once every 175 years. This was the Grand Tour, an opportunity to visit 4 planets in one mission using gravity assists. The spacecraft they constructed were miracles of 1970s engineering, yet by modern standards, they are fossils. Each probe carried 11 scientific instruments and ran on RTGs, nuclear batteries turning heat from decaying plutonium into electricity. But here is the kicker. The onboard computer holds roughly 68 kilobytes of memory. That is less than what is required to store a single low-quality digital photo today. Engineers built these systems to operate flawlessly without repairs, self-diagnosis tools, or backups, but they never built them for this. On September 5, 1977, Voyager 1 launched, riding a Titan I Centaur rocket into the history books. Few could have guessed that nearly half a century later, it would still be generating headlines, not for what it was discovering, but for what might have discovered it. For decades, Voyager 1 reigned as the champion of the solar system. It unveiled the raging storms of Jupiter and the volcanoes of Io. It revealed the methane atmosphere of Titan and the braided rings of Saturn. Then, in 1990, it captured the iconic pale blue dot image, reducing Earth to a pixel in a sunbeam before its cameras were powered down forever to conserve energy. But the true mystery began once it left home. Scientists were uncertain where our solar system ended. They knew of the Heliosphere, a protective bubble formed by the sun, but they didn't know what lay beyond. In 2012, Voyager 1 crossed the heliopause. It officially entered interstellar space. Researchers expected this region to be uniform, quiet, and predictable. They were mistaken. Voyager found a dynamic environment teeming with surprises. The plasma was far denser than predicted and superheated. Cosmic rays bombarded the vessel from every angle. Most intriguingly, it detected tsunami waves, periodic oscillations in the plasma, suggesting that interstellar space was structured and active. At first, physics could account for this, but by 2017, the data became harder to justify. The waves weren't fading. They displayed mathematical patterns and relationships that hinted at something complex. Something was out there in the void, and Voyager was sailing straight into it. The first indication that Voyager was losing its mind, or perhaps gaining a new one, emerged in late 2017. NASA engineers noticed that the ACS, the system responsible for keeping the antenna pointed at Earth, was transmitting contradictory info. The telemetry data claimed the antenna was facing the wrong direction, a direction that would render communication impossible. Yet, the signal remained strong and clear. One engineer compared it to receiving a phone call from someone claiming to be in Antarctica, while your caller ID insisted they were calling from next door. It was as if the spacecraft existed in 2 places simultaneously. They attempted to diagnose the issue, but the anomaly persisted. Voyager was communicating correctly while reporting its position incorrectly. Then, by 2023, the strangeness escalated. The plasma wave instrument began detecting rhythmic patterns unlike anything ever seen. These weren't random. They were distinct oscillations with precise frequencies that appeared for hours, vanished, and then returned. It was as if Voyager was traversing structured regions of space, perhaps even the cosmic web connecting galaxies. But nothing natural should generate structured signals lasting for months. Were these the initial whispers of something else? If the data patterns were odd, what occurred in 2024 was physically alarming. The spacecraft's temperature sensors, dormant for years and supposed to read near absolute zero, suddenly woke up. They began to show rhythmic spikes. Every 4.88 hours, the external sensor array would heat up by nearly 30 degrees, then cool back down. This cycle repeated with such precision that it could only be the result of external energy input. Even more terrifying, these heat pulses matched the rhythm of the plasma waves detected months prior. Whatever was out there wasn't just waving at Voyager, it was touching it. NASA panicked. These spikes threatened to fry the aging systems. But then came the paradox. Despite the thermal stress, Voyager's power consumption improved. The spacecraft began running more efficiently than its age should permit. It was like watching an old car overheat while simultaneously getting better gas mileage. Something was stressing the ship, but something was also helping it compensate, optimizing its 1970s energy grid in ways it was never programmed to do. But the temperature anomalies were merely the opening act. What happened next would challenge physics itself. For 47 years, Voyager 1 followed a path dictated by physics and gravity. NASA could predict its location years in advance. But in mid-2024, the math stopped working. Voyager began to drift off course. At first, it was subtle, just a few kilometers, but by early 2025, it was hundreds of kilometers off. And the scary part? It wasn't random. It wasn't a thruster malfunction spinning it out of control. One engineer described it as watching a sailboat tack against the wind. The spacecraft was making tiny, deliberate course corrections. The problem is Voyager can't do that. Its thrusters are used only for orientation, not for navigation like this. It lacks the brain or the fuel to steer itself. Yet, it was being gently pulled toward a specific point in empty space, adjusting its trajectory like a ship answering a captain's wheel. NASA tried to fight back. Engineers sent commands to fire thrusters in the opposite direction to correct the drift. Voyager received the commands. It acknowledged them, but it didn't obey. The trajectory continued to change, as if something was overriding NASA's instructions. By late 2025, the destination became clear. Voyager was being redirected toward a region of space that, on our charts, contains absolutely nothing. Just void. Desperate to understand what the probe was seeing, NASA made a Hail Mary play. They decided to reactivate Voyager's camera system. These cameras have been shut down for 35 years. They were frozen blocks of metal in the dark. No one expected them to function. But 21 hours later, Voyager answered. The response stunned the control room. Not only did the camera turn on using significantly less power than the specs required, but the image it sent back wasn't a photo. Voyager sent a data visualization, a complex spiraling pattern of light and dark rings, looking almost like a tree trunk or a fingerprint. Analysts realized this was a visual representation of the plasma wave data it had been collecting. Here is why that is terrifying. Voyager's 1970s computer cannot do this. It lacks the processing power to convert raw data into graphics. That is something modern supercomputers do on Earth. Yet, something onboard Voyager had processed the data before sending it. It was as if someone had installed Photoshop on a calculator from 1977. The upgrade didn't stop there. Other dormant instruments, photopolarimeters, spectrometers, started waking up one by one. They began sending data that was highly compressed and optimized, far more efficient than the original programming allowed. It was as if an alien software patch had been uploaded. But the most chilling detail was the timing. Voyager began anticipating commands. Engineers would prepare an instruction to activate a sensor, and before they could hit send, Voyager would confirm it had already done it. Was it reading minds? The team tested this by preparing commands on an offline computer. Voyager didn't respond to those. That meant it wasn't telepathy. It was surveillance. Voyager, or whatever is controlling it, was intercepting and acting on radio communications faster than the 21-hour lightspeed delay should allow. It had become active, adaptive, and seemingly intelligent. NASA assembled a dream team of SETI researchers, linguists, and cryptographers to crack the code. What they found inside the data stream defied conventional understanding. The data contained nested layers of information, like Russian dolls. The primary layer was normal magnetic field strengths and plasma densities. But encoded within those readings were secondary patterns that seemed to map a region of space around Voyager in 3 dimensions. And inside that map was yet another layer, mathematical sequences that didn't correspond to anything Voyager was measuring. These sequences followed their own internal logic, repeating and evolving in ways that weren't random. It was intelligent code hiding in plain sight behind boring scientific numbers. One sequence in particular appeared repeatedly. When researchers plotted these numbers as a ratio, they created a perfect spiral, the exact same spiral pattern that had appeared in the mysterious image Voyager's reactivated camera had sent days earlier. This spiral had mathematical properties similar to the golden ratio, a number that appears throughout nature on Earth, but it wasn't identical. It was offset by a tiny precise amount. When they analyzed that offset, the room went silent. The difference precisely matched the ratio between the masses of helium and hydrogen in interstellar space. It was as if someone had taken a universal mathematical constant and signed it with the chemical composition of the neighborhood Voyager was traveling through. This wasn't a glitch. This was a signature. In May 2025, the data stream shifted focus again. Voyager began transmitting pulsar timing information, the precise intervals between pulses from rapidly rotating neutron stars. Pulsars are like cosmic lighthouses, each with a unique fingerprint. Voyager's data formed a 3-dimensional map with a spacecraft at the center. But the map didn't just show where these objects were. It showed connections. It was a connect-the-dots puzzle drawn across hundreds of light years. When researchers followed these lines, they converged on a single point in space about 4.3 light-years for Voyager's position. There was nothing visible there. No planet, no star, just empty space. Yet, every pattern in Voyager's data pointed toward it like a giant cosmic arrow. NASA tried to keep this classified, sharing it only with select government officials. But science is hard to keep secret. As word leaked out, the pressure mounted. In November 2025, they finally held a press conference. It was carefully worded, but the admission was historic. They acknowledged that Voyager 1 was exhibiting anomalous behavior consistent with external modification of its systems and was transmitting data with complexity beyond its design capabilities. They didn't say the word aliens. They didn't have to. What they admitted was that Voyager had made contact with something in the void. Something that reached into our primitive machine, reprogrammed it, and turned it into a messenger pointing us to a specific address just 4.3 light-years away. So here we are. The grand tour is over. Voyager 1 was built to explore planets, but it seems it has ended up exploring something far more profound. We didn't find them. They found us. And they didn't just wave hello. They reached inside our technology, rewrote our code, and sent us a map. The coordinates point to a location just 4.3 light-years away. That's right next door in cosmic terms. A neighbor we never knew we had, waiting for us to notice them. Now, the question isn't, are we alone? The question is, what do we do with the address? Do we send a reply? Or do we stay quiet and hope they don't come knocking? I want to hear your theory in the comments. Is Voyager 1 a messenger? Or is it a trap? If this deep dive into the unknown kept you awake, smash that like button and subscribe. We're just getting started, and you don't want to miss what comes next. Voyager is calling home. The only problem is it's not our voice anymore. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.